Right. Andy, are you good? Are you in?
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Dave?
Yep, you're fine.
Thanks.
And Brian's going to run the slides, I think. Does that work, Brian?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to open him now.
I accidentally set up a waiting room, so I got to do that too.
Thanks, guys. Good morning, Dr. Anthone. I think we'll give it another couple minutes before we get started, if that works for you.
Yeah, fine, Andy. Are you hearing me okay?
Yep, you're coming in great. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. This is Andy Hale with the Nebraska Hospital Association. We'll go ahead and start today's call with Dr. Anthone. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Anthone, go ahead and take it away.
So 3 areas today. We'll cover the hospital data for the week, the vaccination updates, and then the variant updates, and then just a quick update on the Johnson & Johnson situation as far as what the advisory committee on immunization practices did yesterday. So for the week, again, we had an increase in hospital patients 2 weeks in a row now where we've had an increase in patients hospitalized. We went up to 168 people in the hospital as of Sunday, April 11th. And our test positivity rate also increased above 6 to 6.2% for the week. This number of patients on ventilators statewide also increased to 20 from 15. And the largest increase in patients hospitalized in this day was in Douglas County by far, with an increase of around 29 patients from 78 to 107. The patients in Douglas County on ventilators also increased by 6 patients. Lancaster County had a slight increase from 24 patients to 27 patients, but a decrease in the number of patients on ventilators. We've uniquely tested 52.7% of the Nebraska population, with 11.1% of the population testing positive. Our case fatality rate remains fairly stable at 1.04%. Last week we did have, I think, 35 deaths reported. So a little bit larger than the week before, where we only had 6 deaths reported. So the deaths reported have to do with how they come in from the local health departments and when they have all the death certificate and the COVID validation for cause of death. So it's not something that is a constant number. It just depends on when those get reported. Our patient on ICU, you can see, went up statewide to 49 patients, and specifically in Douglas County increased to 30 patients from 17 the week before, but a decrease in patients in Lancaster County in the ICU. So you can see the uptick on the next slide with the number of patients statewide in hospitals, and Douglas County and Lancaster County. If we could go to the next slide, Andy. Andy, are you there?
Yep, sorry. There we go.
So just again, the state and wide patients in hospitals in blue, in Douglas County in green, and Lancaster County in red. You can see the uptick in statewide, but it's particularly pronounced in Douglas County and a little bit less pronounced in Lancaster County last week. So our bullet point highlights for the week. We can go to the next slide, Andy. An increase of 36 patients. Last week we had an increase of 29 patients, so we've had an increase in 65 patients over the last 2 weeks. Douglas County accounted for 80% of the increase in patients last week, with an increase in 29 patients in those hospitals. Our 7-day average of staffed hospital beds occupied by COVID patients increased to 4.2%, up from 3.2% the week before, and from our low of 2.8% about 3 weeks ago. 29% of hospital COVID patients are in the ICU. Again, that's been a very stable number over the last several weeks to months. 41% of the ICU COVID patients are on ventilators. Again, fairly stable number over the last few months. And then 14% of our statewide ICU patients are COVID patients. That has increased here over the last 2 weeks as we've increased our hospital census. So before I go to the next slide, Andy, I just want to say that it looks so far this week, for the first 3 days of this week, anyway, we're on a downward trend. So obviously we had 18 consecutive weeks of a decrease in hospitalized patients, and then over the last 2 weeks, an increase. Unless something really changes over the next 4 days, usually our largest increase in hospitalized patients are on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And so far, we're down 11 patients or 13 patients actually statewide for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, which is a good sign that things are at least stabilizing, hopefully, or plateauing, or maybe we'll even be on a downward trend when I report again next week. Our number of tests that were positive this past week were on an average of 342 positive new cases per day. And that was down from the week before from 350 new cases a day, with approximately the same number of tests performed. So that's staying constant right around, we're seeing about 8,000 people test per day now over the last week or two. And so far for the week, we're right at around 340 new cases a day for the first 3 days of the week. So I do want to add a little bit of an optimistic view that it looks like hospitalizations have stabilized out. If we go to the next slide, Andy, you can just see the number of new admits per day. Last week on the, excuse me, those numbers should be that we averaged 20 patients a day. I don't know why that got transposed there, but we averaged 20 new patients hospitalized each day last week on a 7-day average, up from 14 the week before. So we'll see how that's going to go this week also, but it looks like on at least a stable, if not a downward trend for the week. So all in the hospital report there, Andy. I do want to say I found out some data from the Red Cross this week for non-vaccinated blood donors. There are 47% of those blood donors testing positive for COVID antibodies. And for vaccinated donors, and again, they don't define what vaccinated means. It means at least they've received maybe 1 dose, and it doesn't actually ask when they received that. About 94% of vaccinated blood donors have COVID antibodies, which would be expected. So I'll stop there, Andy, and proceed to any vaccination update numbers here, but answer any questions about hospital data.
Any questions for Dr. Anthone today on hospital data?
I'm feeling good about this week, so hopefully we'll continue to see that trend for the rest of the week. So on vaccination data, don't want to bog you down in too many details, but we have fully vaccinated now about 1/3 of the population of Nebraska over age 16. So that's a pretty good number. I think that ranks fairly high nationally. And of the partially vaccinated, at least 1 dose, we're up to about 47% of the population of Nebraska over age 16 being partially vaccinated. So again, that I think ranks fairly high nationally also. So we're doing pretty well as far as our percentage of the population getting vaccinated. Particularly our 65 and older age group, we have 62% of that age group fully vaccinated, and 80% of that group with at least 1 dose, which hopefully means we'll be at 80% of the 65 and older population being fully vaccinated at least sometime in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So we're proceeding down, as you know, about 50% of the population of Nebraska has had at least 1 dose down to age 45, and about 1/3 of the people under age 45 have had at least 1 dose now. So obviously we're working on that. Everybody knows we won't be administering any Johnson & Johnson vaccine for the short term here. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices did not vote yesterday on deciding on what to do as far as the J&J product is concerned because of the incidences of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis along with thrombocytopenia that's been seen in 6 patients, and I believe I heard a report that it's up to 8 patients reported now nationally. Again, that would be only about a 1 in a million chance of having that happen. But out of caution, they decided to halt or recommend pausing of any J&J vaccine. We were only to receive about 1,100 doses of J&J here over the next week and then the following week. So it's not going to affect our supply too much over the next 2 weeks in the short term. We should be receiving about 46,000 of doses of Pfizer and Moderna over the next 2 weeks. Well, each week over the next 2 weeks as a first dose, and about 44,000 of Pfizer and Moderna as a second dose, for about a total of 90,000 doses per week over the next 2 weeks of Pfizer and Moderna. And speaking with Angie Ling, our incident commander for the vaccine action team, they did do a great job of pivoting the clinics that were supposed to have Johnson & Johnson to Moderna, I think mostly, and maybe some Pfizer. But I think things have gone pretty smooth as far as that goes right now. So just to give you an idea, our seasonal flu vaccine uptake for Nebraska is right around 55% on average. So, we want to get closer to 70% if possible. But just to give you that as a baseline, our uptake for seasonal flu vaccine is right around 55%. And right now we're at about 47, as I mentioned, 47% for the age group greater than 16. I do understand that Pfizer has submitted their emergency use authorization data to the FDA for the age group 12 to 15-year-old for the Pfizer product. And usually that'll be about a 4-week turnaround time before we really hear back or see what the FDA decides to do for that age group. So that's pretty much it for the vaccine update. Andy, any questions on that?
I do not have any questions on that. Any submitted? Any questions for Dr. Anthone?
So the
Dr.
last,
Anthone,
yeah.
this Marty down in Auburn, we're having trouble filling our vaccination clinics, getting enough arms for the doses we have in stock. What do you suggest? I mean, we're sending out thousands of invitations and we're just not getting responses. What do you recommend?
We're working on that, Marty, and it's not just here in Nebraska, it's nationally. I do the state and territorial health official calls twice a week with our organization called the Anthone, and every state is experiencing that same problem. I mean, if there is a common theme, I hear a lot that we need to maybe pivot to doing more in the healthcare provider setting, which we think will help, and we're going to definitely increase the pharmacy. I think that might help in the vaccine uptake and decrease maybe some vaccine hesitancy. But sort of the rate limiting step that I hear when I'm on those calls is that we're waiting to get either smaller vials of the product out or wait for the manufacturers to get that out, or everybody's talking about using single dose pre-filled syringes, so we can get that into the providers' offices and things of that nature. I can only hope that since the government's hearing about that they're working on that plan right now. But that's sort of the feeling I get on that, on how things are going to turn around there, on how we get a little bit better vaccine uptake. Obviously, this latest J&J episode didn't probably help things as far as the vaccine hesitancy goes, but hopefully we'll recover from that.
Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So just lastly on variants, now we've seen an increase in variants as expected. I don't want to say it's increasing to the point where we're overly concerned. We're up to 291 of the variants now sequenced here in Nebraska. the vast majority are the UK variant, the B117, where 234 out of those 291 are the UK variant. We have seen the California variants, but they aren't increasing as fast as the UK variant are concerned. And we still just have 2 of the Brazilian variants. And then this past week, we reported 1 of the New York variants. So again, the specimens that we're getting that are being sequenced, now we can sequence at the public health lab, at the College of Public Health, and with CHI, they're doing about 100 sequences a week. And, obviously the trend is for the UK variant. And the good news is, again, I saw a report yesterday that says the 3 vaccines, but specifically Pfizer, Moderna, are very, very effective against the UK variant. So, as Marty said, it's just a matter of now of getting our population vaccinated. And, we're hoping to have some guidance here, as I said, so that we can get that out to the providers and to the pharmacies as quick as possible. We've had 177 reinfections reported. So that would be people that have had an infection and then have tested positive 90 days after their initial infection. We've got 177 of those reported. We can only say those are possible because we don't really have the specimens from their initial tests to really say that this is, truly a new infection versus just what we call a test positivity from, their first infection. But in any way, of those 177 reinfections, there's been 4 hospitalizations and 0 deaths. So that's good news as far as the reinfections goes. As far as vaccine breakthroughs are concerned, we have 52 reported vaccine breakthroughs. Again, that would be somebody that tests positive 14 days after having either their second dose of Moderna or Pfizer or their first shot of Johnson & Johnson. So we've got 52 of those reported. Of those 52, 38 are variants of concern. The majority, again, the UK variant, 31 of the 38 being the UK variant on the vaccine breakthroughs, and 7 of the California variant. Again, only 4 hospitalizations on those vaccine breakthroughs. And so far, 0 deaths reported on those vaccine breakthroughs. So we're getting that data reported a lot better now. We have a system in place where we will automatically be able to track that. And Matt Donahue, Dr. Donahue, is the one that's sort of in charge in that. And he'll be giving a weekly update, probably on the 9 o'clock call. And I'll give the update on this call on Thursdays, Andy.
Just a couple questions I had on the variants, Dr. Anthone, in regards to, is there any data that we can find that shows by county of where the variants are? And are there any different symptoms with the variants as opposed to just the plain old regular COVID-19?
No different symptoms. If there is a trend that Matt Donahue is picking up, it's that the California variant might have a little bit of a higher risk for hospitalization, but the numbers are so small we can't really make any statement right now on that. But that's just a trend that he was noting, that maybe the California variant has a little bit of higher hospitalization rate than even the UK variant. So I don't know if that answers the question about symptoms, but at least it says a little bit about hospitalizations. What was your first question again, Andy? I forgot.
Are we tracking them, the variants in counties?
County.
Some of our providers and members want to know if the variant is in their county. Is there any way to find that data?
I'll ask Matt that information. I'm sure he has that information. I don't know if it's automated though, that we can see that, but I'll ask him that question to see. I'll just tell you, just from my anecdotal talking to Matt, it's mostly in Douglas County and Lancaster County where we see most of the variants now picked up.
Great. That is all the submitted questions I had. Any other questions or comments today from Dr. Anthone?
So again, I don't want to leave it all doom and gloom here. I'm sort of liking what I'm seeing so far this week as far as hospitalizations go. So hopefully, that will continue for the week, and we'll be back to negative numbers here by the end of the week. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Dr. Anthone. You're
All right.
welcome. And we'll be in touch soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care.